All right, we're here. Some people showed up. This is awesome. How's everybody doing today?
Good. I'm doing good.
All right, fantastic. Now, there are so many freaking stories today that I wanted to make sure I went in. By the way, did you know that YouTube has swear policies where if you're going to drop an F-bomb, make sure you do it, I think it's after 20 seconds or something like that, but without too much frequency. So I was wondering, do I want to open with this clip right away or not? But I'm babbling for a few seconds to make sure I'm over a minute so we have the buffer, because we're going to share the F-bomb. And I think this is the perfect opening story to set us right.
Obviously, you know that there's a public perception that, and you're clarifying this now, but there's a public perception that that was part of a apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself.
But
go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask.
I like to say Bob. Specifically to Bob Iger. But, and of course, as soon as I do that, David turns off his camera and runs away. I was going to have him start talking about this, but let's talk about Elon. Let's talk about his statement. Let's talk about his lawsuit. And we can also talk about the Rumble lawsuit, the True Social lawsuit. There seems to be a lot of action flying that way, but we can also talk. Hear myself. Is that my tab or?
No, my phone was being ridiculous and the stream popped up.
Okay. Well, good. Thank you for being subscribed.
Yes. I was trying to close it down. I accidentally opened it up and it started playing.
I love that clip. I love how later on, he asks him another question and Elon just goes, G, F, Y. He just, he's just like, that's my statement. And it's very satisfying because he was not doing anything anti-Semitic whatsoever in any of his comments. I'm fascinated by the lawsuit. I'm going to turn it over to somebody else, but I really love the clip. I'm a big fan.
No, I mean, if you could talk about the suit, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And the clip, because he was enraged. I had written, he was stressed. You could see the stress coming out of everything. His halting speech. It can be said that he's under fire continuously. And Linda Yaccarino released a memo about it, which is better than some of her normal ones. Half the time. I
haven't seen that. Has anybody else? Have you read it?
I just saw it this morning. It just literally came in, but right here, she stated, what was it? That the statement was candid and profound. So definitely she's a marketer. Good choice of words. I don't know. What's a better way to put that to give it the highest value and not, but tiptoe around it. So I don't know.
But, I mean, okay. He has FU money. They can't mess with him financially, but he does have a financial obligation to the shareholders, right?
He does. No, he's the shareholder. It's private.
He is the only shareholder. I didn't know how that shook out. Are there other shareholders or no?
I think he might have investors, but
yeah, I think there are. But they all love him, though.
Okay. No, I mean, as long as they're in the same camp with him, he can literally say that, and nobody can do anything about it. And it's not like people are going to stop using Twitter. There's more and more people that are on it. I can't stand the thing, but I use it because it's sort of a necessary evil with this sort of thing that I've got going on. Yeah, he can. I absolutely love it. I don't know what else to say except he could get away with it. And there's nothing, if he is the only shareholder and he has investors, if they're on board with it, there's nothing they can do about it.
What's interesting about it is, you know how you said he has FU money? I would go one further. Adam Carolla has described having real money as having F me money.
Yes.
And the difference between FU money and F me money is a whole nother scale, as in, I will piss away millions of dollars that will just completely cost me, or in his case, billions of dollars, just for the satisfaction of destroying you. That is F me money. I will F myself because I have so much, just for the pleasure. And that is, I've never seen anybody like that. And he does seem ready and willing to burn Twitter to the ground, to let it go ahead and sink to $1 billion or 2 billion or whatever it is. And I'm very curious, do you guys think he's going to pull it out or not?
Well,
has anybody read the lawsuit? Because I haven't. I'm aware of the circumstances of it, but I'm curious if anybody's actually read the lawsuit.
Nate might have. I don't know. Nate, have you read the Elon lawsuit?
No, I haven't been able to touch. Haven't been able to touch it yet. I've just read the news media thing, what they've been saying about it. But
okay, well,
it's in California, right?
Huh? I don't know.
I think you found in Texas.
I read it. Okay, no, I have to go take care of something in a few seconds. I'm listening, but I have to. It's mildly urgent, but not serious. I read it. Texas. Nate, I had asked Nate about the question about the slap statutes potentially being a bar. Barnes and I talked about it last Sunday, and Barnes seems to think that at the federal level, it's that the slap statutes, the state anti-slap statutes, won't necessarily apply. So
no, he's right.
So then this likely survives a motion to dismiss, or there will be no anti-slap dismissal of this lawsuit. I thought it was good. I mean, like I'm very optimistic because I like Elon, what he's doing, and the whole everything that he's doing. Sued Media Matters on the basis that they wrote a report saying how mainstream advertising is running adjacent Nazi-ish or Yahtzee, whatever the hell, white supremacist accounts, questionable accounts. And so they write this report saying, did you know that this is like, it's a big problem on Twitter? Big brands, are you aware of this? And it turns out that they do not disclose that in order for them to get those results of big brand advertising adjacent to neo-Nazi post or whatever, that they had to basically game the entire system to bypass all of the protocol safety measures that are in place. So they took over accounts that were over 30 days old to bypass advertising restrictions for the first 30 days. They only followed 10% or a tenth of what ordinary people follow on Twitter, and they only followed white supremacist offensive accounts and big brand accounts. So of their 30 or 40 followers, they only followed Nazi accounts and big brands, and then they just sat there refreshing until an ad ran adjacent a neo-Nazi post.
Just a quick question on the procedural part. So it's a diverse. They're in federal court under Texas law. They're in Texas court under federal law. Yes. All right. So they're in diversity because just so everybody understands, in the Fifth Circuit, they said that state anti-slap statutes, which Texas does have, is a procedural measure that does not apply in federal court. So if you're filing federal court, you don't have any anti-slap to worry about. So in that, Barnes is 100% correct. So that's smart for Elon's lawyers to file in federal court in Texas, because then you don't have to worry about the anti-slap. Yeah, it's because that was my concern, is that they're going to say we're just exercising First Amendment rights and you're trying to stifle us through the use of lawsuits. So that's the nature of the lawsuit. They say they deliberately misrepresented in order to tortiously interfere with contracts to get advertisers to pull. They went with disparagement. Nate, disparagement is like sort of
defamation,
business defamation.
It's business defamation, and also I think interference with proposed contracts, right? Which is that was the third cause of action. Prospective
business, I think.
Yeah, perspective.
So I thought it's a good lawsuit, and they're a bunch of scumbag liars, and they know what they're doing. It's just terrible.
Well, they really seized on that moment where Elon tweeted, the supposedly anti-Semitic comment, which I if you read his following tweet, it clarifies that he's going after the ADL. This was, obviously like, was it a week ago or several weeks ago? They really seized on that moment to try and misrepresent his stance and his views, where he was, saying nothing anti-Semitic of the sort, in my opinion. And I'm
not going to kid you; it was effective. I mean, look, obviously. I'm not the only one in my family. I'm not the only one in my family who's a practicing Jew. I mean, my entire family, extended family, all practicing Jews. And any conversation I had with them, every one of them was convinced by the media that Elon is an anti-Semite. It was a very effective campaign against him. They showed that tweet and his response and that initial response and nothing else. And it was very effective. And I spent, like, any conversation I had with anyone where it came up, where they would bring it up to me, obviously, because, the nature of what I do. And I was like, no, he's not at all anti-Semitic. If you look through the follow-ups, you look through everything he's ever said and done. This is well before he went to Israel, which he says was unrelated. But yeah,
right.
Anyway.
It's just if you read that first tweet, because he's saying, you're absolutely correct. When there was another person who had, for anybody who isn't aware of it, somebody who had commented, talking about how people are perceiving Jewish people right now, and the way that anti-Semitism is presented, and the way that people are reacting to it.
The tweet specific that he responded to specifically said Jews are basically here to sow dissent and discord and disunity in this country, and that's what Jews do. And he said, and his response was, that is the actual truth.
Well, that's a
little overgeneralization.
Well, it was a little more nuanced. He said the tweet said, "I am so done with Jews in the West complaining about the consequences of the policies of open borders that they've espoused. Now that they discover, lo and behold, you've openly promoted open borders and let in a lot of people who you discover now don't like you as a result, of whatever." And so
it was a very broad brush.
It was overly broad, but he's not wrong in that there's activist organizations, and then they referenced it to the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, where there are Jewish groups, activists who say, diversity is our strength, open borders, yada, yada. There's a lot who are not like that as well, and they're called Nazis. So if you're not open border, you're the Stephen Millers where you're called a Nazi. But the point was, anyone who understands things knew what the point was. But Twitter and the media is for deliberately misunderstanding so they can paint people as anti-Semites when they're clearly not.
Well, I'm going to be the raging liberal here and just say, listen, I definitely agree. I don't think it was anti-Semitic at all. I don't think Eli's was anti-Semitic. But number one, he's stupid to put himself in that position because he's running $1 billion corporation. We shouldn't even be having this conversation, right? That's number one. But even putting that to the side, the fact that when you do start sharing things about overgeneralizations of an entire group based on ethnicity, all Jews, blah, 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 with no clarification, it can lead a reasonable person to think that you're overgeneralizing that group and cause someone to say that this may be anti-Semitic. So I do understand that. I don't believe Elon is. I believe it's all BS. But I think he unfortunately put himself in that position. And I think the Media Matters case, I think he has Media Matter by the balls. But I do think this is more on Elon, a cell phone for Elon, than people just saying this is something.
Oh, yeah. He admitted.
Sorry. Yeah, he could have added one sentence to it and said, this is 100% true, and then said, look at the ADL, and three things. And then it would have been done.
Yes.
There would have been immediate parsing or clarification or filtering.
Or merge the two tweets, because he had a reply tweet to that first tweet that clarified what he meant, but he didn't put those two together. And so, of course, everybody was just going to read the first one that was the most inflammatory, that, it's like the misleading headline sort of thing. And so he did put himself in that position. I agree, Nate, and he should have known better because he's Elon Musk. Of course, everybody's going to look at that and they're going to frame it that way because he's this right winger. And oh my God, he's taking over Twitter and he's turning everything super right wing. And he's super problematic. Like, of course they're going to go after him, but I'm glad to know that the lawsuit is excellent, and because Media Matters is incredibly problematic as a
is it possible that he's using this lawsuit only to get access to the discovery, and he really doesn't care about the lawsuit itself?
I think he wants to bury them. I think he hates them. I think he really hates them. I think he wants to bankrupt them. And to Nate's point, by the way, he recognized that it was stupid. If you watch the full interview, which is an hour and a half long, he called it one of the 5 stupidest things he ever posted. So it's not like he was like, he was standing behind it as well worded. He's like, no, that was very.
But you know what that does? That hurts his lawsuit, because if he's saying it, that it's one of the 5 worst things, blah, blah, blah. That's exhibit 1 for your motion to dismiss. Guess what? He said something stupid. So how could it be defamation?
And that's the blurry thing. That's the problem.
Hold on, Nate. The defamation is in their experiment, not his tweet.
Yeah,
that's 2 different things.
And
they put a lot of effort and energy into creating a, like they didn't go as far as doctoring screenshots of splicing things together, which, perhaps somebody, else could have. But they intentionally gamed the algorithm, which they knew how to do, to misrepresent things in a way that made it look natural. And, so it was, I think it was very egregious what they did and how they represented it.
But when was the tweet, the You Speak Actual Truth? I mean, I don't even think that was related to the lawsuit. The lawsuit was strictly the Media Matters report that said that they're running ads adjacent, and it's implying it was common practice and not exceedingly rare. 1 in 500 million, apparently, and that's only as a result of having gamed every aspect of the restrictions or safety protocol in place.
Well, I just wanted to pick your brain. Sometimes I'll cover a story and I'm like, you know what? I really want to get thoughts from other attorneys on this. This is my take on it. And then we're venturing into something which I actually said I want to talk to other attorneys about their perspective on this, because to me, okay, so he's got this lawsuit against Media Matters, and and these things are getting glommed together in the way that the public tends to glom it together because it's how your brain works, but not how the law actually works. And dissecting what's a healthy way from the perspective of his lawsuit against Media Matters, which is what we as attorneys are supposed to be, that's the information we're supposed to be providing the public. So his information, as Viva correctly pointed out, is rooted in three causes of action. You have interference with a contract, you have the business defamation, and then you have interference with the prospective business contracts, meaning that you hurt my reputation. Now other people are not going to, who would have done business with me, are not going to do business with me. Now that we have what they did, and then you have what he did. And the question ultimately, which we can anticipate being asked before the court, and the defense of Media Matters being, we understand that Media Matters proudly said we caused all these people to leave X. But here's Elon in an interview proudly saying, go. If you don't like what I tweet, if you don't like what I say, if you have a problem with me expressing free speech, adios, Bob Iger, adios, Disney, get the hell out of here. I don't need you. Go F yourself. That's what he said. Now, so the question now becomes, all these people are flying away. Are they flying away because Elon here is admitting that it's because of his own tweets that they're leaving, or are they fleeing because of what Media Matters did with their screenshot, which is completely unrelated to Elon? And one would anticipate, I would think, that Elon's attorneys are sitting there and saying, yeah, dude, you got brass cojones with the whole go F yourself. But this is really potentially harming our lawsuit against Media Matters and pinning the blame on them for all these advertisers fleeing. So I wanted to just pick your brains on that, because
two things, Joe. Number one, we got where we're at in the stage of litigation. This is a pre-answer motion to dismiss. So you don't got to prove it. You got to just put on a prima facie case to get to discovery. And I think, like somebody else mentioned earlier, if the game discovery, I think, is just as valuable as going the whole way. So if Elon, so what you're saying is true, but I think that's more of a factual question, determination for the finder of fact, which is a jury generally in defamation cases, or a jury or a judge. But trying to survive a motion to dismiss to get to discovery, I think it's irrelevant in that sense. I don't know how the rest of the panel would think.
At this stage, yeah, but I'm talking about as far as the ultimate victory in the lawsuit.
Well, I know. I say telling someone to go F themselves after you've incurred the damage or the loss, okay, that's fine, but it doesn't negate the loss or it doesn't contradict the loss. And so, yeah, go fuck yourselves. But whoever just cost me $100 million in ad revenue, I'm gonna go fuck you. Is basically, I don't know.
But Viva, he's basically admitting it's not because of Media Matters that they're leaving. He's basically admitting it's because of his own tweets that they're leaving.
I don't see that. I don't necessarily see that.
I think you guys read it that way. Then go ahead.
Well, it's sort of like here's the sequence of events. So he tweets it. It becomes a major thing. If Media Matters does not do what they do, does he still incur the same kind of loss?
Well, how do you draw that line as to how much was because of him and how much was of Media Matters?
That's a good question. I think what I was saying before is I think they seized upon it. I think they seized upon the controversy of his tweet and took advantage of that moment in order to represent that? Were they inspired by the fact that he put himself out there that way, and thought to themselves, well, now we are going to make him look even worse? Because it was clearly intentional on their part to represent Twitter in that particular way, to game the system, to to put those screenshots out there. And so the time that elapsed between, I'm wondering, was his tweet their inspiration for putting it out there in that sense? It seems as though there wasn't, intent to harm the reputation of Twitter on their part, but I'm not sure exactly how that all folds in.
Here's a comment that a lot of people who aren't in love with Elon probably would go with. It's ironic, Mr. Free Speech suing because he disagrees with free speech. In reality, X has a massive problem with hate, violence, pornography, which Elon Musk refuses to address under the terms of service. Now, all this can be argued, and I guess the big question is, for all of you, there is free speech, but then there's misrepresentation. Now, wouldn't a fraudulent statement or a lie not be speech? Or correct me if I'm wrong. Or not protected speech, I guess.
Defamation has never been categorized as protected speech, ever. So you can't defame somebody and claim free speech. That's just the bottom line. It's never been part of the First Amendment.
But do they defame him is a legal question.
It's not like these causes of action are novel. These are long-standing causes of action that exist in every state that Elon is suing under. So the concept that it's in violation of the First Amendment or whatever, if he had protection for that, it'd be through the slap or through showing it's not a lie or whatever. But yeah, I mean, David's right. This is normal kind of law here to be able to sue for this sort of thing.
Well, it's false light. I wanted to say the false light. If fraud is used in order to depict somebody in a false light, which is akin to defamation, then we have a problem. And if they if they game the algorithm the way they did, the way it's been described, and they did that with the intent to put Elon in false light or X in a false light, then that is not protected speech.
It's not relevant. This is the mistake. It's such a common mistake I hear so many people make. And this is what's so frustrating. Free speech is your relationship with the government. What can the government do to you? Defamation is your relation to other private persons. They're not related at all, because defamation and anything someone says to harm you is what are their rights vis-a-vis you, as opposed to free speech, which is always between the government and the citizen.
Yeah, but first of all, they want to show that Elon's a hypocrite. Fine. First of all, he's not. Because even if one were to apply the government standard, defamation, free speech never included defamation, death threats, harassment, fraud. It never included those things. The second issue from that question, that there is a problem of violence, pornography, whatever on Twitter. First of all, their record for anti-Semitic tweets, I think, came in 2018 or 2019, prior to Elon taking over. It's better now than it has been.
No, it's got to be pretty bad right now with what's going on in the Middle East. I'm pretty sure it's a bad month to look.
Well, no, but that also depends on what you consider to be anti-Semitic tweets. I mean, the amount of Jew replies that I get to my posts, which have nothing to do with the Middle East, people just letting me know that they know that I'm Jewish. Good for you. Fine. But the record, or it went down after Elon took over in terms of anti-Semitic tweets, and the violence and the CP on Twitter. Elon Musk went after it. That was the whole irony, is that no one's giving him credit for the good that he's doing. So there are problems on Twitter. Elon is not a hypocrite for saying I'm free speech, but you don't get to lie and cost me $100 million. And in any event, free speech never included the right to use your words to defraud or defame.
Go
ahead.
There's one big issue about this case that's going to, I think, come back to bite, and which may not help it survive a motion to dismiss, is that if Media Matters gives an opinion and then gives the facts based on what that opinion is based, every court in the country finds that to be protected speech from defamation. So, and from what I'm hearing, you guys are saying Media Matters wrote in a piece, gave their opinion, and said, here's how we developed that opinion. Here are the facts how we developed that opinion. That's generally protected.
Yes. Well, that's the question.
But protected from defamation.
The argument is going to be that they deliberately misrepresented how they got about it. They're going to say it was just we found this image. Like, you didn't find it. You had to jump through hoops to manufacture it. You gave the impression that this was a common problem and not exceedingly rare, and you didn't describe how you went about to yield that result. You just said it implied it happened in the ordinary course of things, which it didn't. That had happened.
Another question that I'm curious he might have some more recourses. If he could find out how they figured it out, because I have a funny feeling that a Twitter engineer or somebody disgruntled may have said, oh, by the way, one way you could get an effect that you want is to do this. And if that is proven, again, I'm speculating all over the place here. If that is proven to be the case, would he have some kind of recourse against that individual, or like a conspiracy on here's how to game it, from somebody inside the company? I don't know if I'm wording it well, but I think there's a question there.
Well, I mean, he definitely have grounds to terminate that employee. What you're talking about, I think, is someone on the inside of Twitter telling Media Matters this is what you can do to game the system.
Yes, or formally inside too. Like, let's say they don't even work there now.
Do this. Yeah.
I think it wasn't a secret that they have safety protocols in effect in terms of like young accounts or new accounts. They don't offer the same stuff. I don't think there was any insider saying this is how you got to do it. They're just scoundrels who know how to do it. And like, hey, let's just continually refresh. Let's have a little bird on the keyboard, hit refresh, and then we get it. Oh, look what we found. There's such deceitful scumbags. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I'll push back on you, Nate, also on this. You're right that opinion may succeed in theory in knocking off the defamation against a business. But I don't know that would help with respect to interference with existing contract or prospective contracts. Meaning,
yes. The reason why is because the underlying defamation is how you get to the business relations issue. So you have to prove the defamation. Then that's how you get the cause of action for interference with the business relations. Because in other words,
I'm not sure if that's actually true, though. I mean, why would it have to be a lie? Let's say they were intentionally telling the truth and promoting people to violate a contract. If I told you the truth, let's say you had a contract to come on here with Eric, and I told you the truth. I said, I'll give you $10,000 to come on my show instead of with Eric. That would be interfering. I'm telling you the truth. I would be truthful, and I'm still interfering with an existing contract that you have with Eric.
Yeah, but the interference has to be unlawful. It has to be based on a tort.
Yeah, the tort he's basing his on is defamation. You're basing yours off of another tort, which is with tort, because you're talking about a contractual tort. But you have to have an underlying tort to advance the business relations issue. If you don't, then what are you suing for? You have to have you have to prove an underlying tort.
One of the things MLS where apparently Texas doesn't have a false light statute. I remember from the Osundairo brothers, not all states had a false light provision. So that's why I guess he went with business disparagement and tortious interference. I think it's good to the extent.
But it's federal, so it shouldn't matter, right?
It's state law.
False light is defamation. It's true defamation.
If
a statement
claims.
That's true. Hold on, that's state, but not federal.
Yeah, it's a state claim.
No, it's a federal. Elon's is a federal.
In federal court.
He's a federal.
So bring state claims under.
Yeah, but the difference between false light and defamation. False light is essentially the statement is true, but it still defames you. A case on the famous case about that is there was a guy in New Jersey. And his company, was people stealing from the company, and they put his picture on the wall, and under his pictures, if you find anybody stealing, blah, 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 there's been multiple thefts. If you find anybody stealing, call this number. They said they put him in even though those statements were true, people were stealing from the company, blah, blah, blah. By them putting his picture up there, it put him in a false light. So it's defamation when the statements are true, but confer a defamatory meaning, where defamation is the statements are false.
So let me explain this, though. If you're in federal court on a normal tort, that's usually going to be in the state law of the state where you're at, because there's no federal law for like you wrecked into the back of my car or whatever. So there are federal questions and statutes and things, but I think they're in there under diversity. I haven't read the suit, but their claims their claims should be state law claims, but they're in federal court without a federal statute because the parties live in different states or whatever. So they have complete diversity. But when you go to federal court, or if you are in state court with state law claims, but you add a federal law claim, you might get removed to federal court. But it's not uncommon for federal district court to have civil claims that are based on the state law, and the federal court will apply that state's law. They don't have their own law for those normal claims that the state has.
Now, I don't do a lot of diversity jurisdiction. Actually, I've never had a diversity jurisdiction. I have a legitimate question. Can he sue in federal court in Texas based on diversity, but apply a different state's statutes like California's?
Yes, that happens all the time. If
Okay.
if like say in a defamation case, that's what happened in Johnny Depp case first, is that they were going to sue in federal court in Virginia. But the problem is that since a lot of stuff happened in California, the Virginia federal court would actually apply California state law to the Virginia claim.
And it might move it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even have to empty. I just took my camera out so we can have like 4 rows of avatars and 4 rows of humans.
Yeah.
I'm back. Did everybody read the Rumble lawsuit?
No, I was interested in that. What are they suing for?
They are suing Nan Doodles is her Twitter feed. I don't know what her name is.
Sleeping Giants lady.
Sleeping Giants lady. Nanny Jammy or Jimmy or something. 2 people, Jane Doe's 1 through 10 or John Doe's 1 through 10. And they are suing not on they're not suing on disparagement business interference. They're suing on defamation on the basis that these people, they don't run Sleeping Giants now. They run another what do they call them?
Yeah, it's like Ad HQ or something. They run another group.
Either way, they do the same thing. And they were running, by their own tweets, were running a campaign to demonetize and hurt Rumble. One of the tweets was like, I didn't hear what happened. I was too busy with Fox News. I was too busy getting Rumble demonetized. And so the allegation of the lawsuits is essentially that these 2 people were tweeting out that Rumble, they were tweeting out in 2023, October or September of 2023, that Rumble derives 90% of its revenue from Google ads. And so they were doing that to give the impression that if Google pulls their ads on Rumble, Rumble would collapse. This is after it's gone public. This is after they've made SEC filings and so on and so forth. And so they're saying they knew it was false because A, it was false, B, we told them it was false, and C, you could see from filings it was false, that they were down to like 1% or even less revenue from Google ads. And so they had attained a certain degree of independence, financial security, so they weren't living at the whim of Google. And these people were trying to give the impression that Rumble was financially much less secure than it was, possibly, made dishonest filings, and the stock price took a hit because presumably or arguably people thought Rumble might be in trouble and might be susceptible to Google pulling their ads. And so they're saying defamation. I guess it's per quad, not per se, because they're going to need some explanation as to why it's defamatory. And the consequences was a precipitous drop of share value based allegedly on that lie, which was a definitive false statement. The actual malice clear from their tweets, I think. So that's the essence of it.
So they knew what they were saying, because that's essential action mouse, right? They knew what they were saying was false.
They knew. I mean, they ought to have known because they were told it was false.
Then they win. Then if because ought to have known doesn't win. It's you got to prove that you knew. Or I think disregarded the truth.
No, they were notified by Rumble it was false.
Okay,
so
all right. Because should have known loses a lot of those.
Yeah. Oh no, it's not like I genuinely believed it. Their best argument is going to be that in 2 years earlier, in 2021. Rumble derived 86% of its revenue from Google ads. But they, for the last 2 years, made the stated objective, we're going to wean off of Google ads so we can be independent and not get parlored. And they weaned it down to an amount that was so low, they don't even need to report it as exposure in their filings. And the argument is that these people knew. The argument is that these people knew, they were told, it was apparent from the filings, and they nonetheless repeated the lie to harm and demonetize Rumble. So it's cool. It's very cool. In Florida, and I don't know. Can you tell who's
the defendant in that case?
It's I just had it open on my computer. 2 individuals.
Are those individuals just cat's paws? I mean, it seems like they're nobodies. Is somebody backing them or funding them? Or
so that's the question.
The Naniti Jamini person, she's been doing this forever, and her organization's like, oh, by the way, did you know there's Nazis? Nazis running around on your ads are showing up there, and they just scared people. They did all that dry snitching email campaigns.
They went after
forever.
They went after Fox.
They called Check My Ads.
Yes, that's her. Yes.
Yep, and they went after Breitbart. It's Nandini Jammy, Claire Atkin, and others. And the question is, who's financing them? So, to the extent this survives dismissal, I don't know what the basis would be: sincere belief or not defamatory. The question is, who is funding these entities? And it would be ironic if it were Satan himself, George Soros.
I think that last super chat from Easy is a fair point, and it's an interesting question because he asked what dates were Media Matters screenshot tweets versus Elon's as far as determining who is the cause in chasing off these advertisers, the question really then becomes, well, which Elon tweet are we talking about? Are we talking about the one that everyone, that he was where he was saying this is the actual truth, or are we talking about other tweets he said which potentially alienated people, that his comments were basically saying, yeah, I alienate people all the time, and if you don't like it, go after yourself.
The Media Matters original publication was November 16. I think Elon Musk's misunderstood tweet post-dated that. But it's based on the report. It wasn't based on the tweets. That's why I think there's like a confusion on this. Elon Musk, you speak actual truth tweet. Let's see when that one was. I thought that was after.
Yeah, it's they all blur together. It might have been before.
Oh, with anti-Semitic tweet, his actual truth. That's from November 17.
Oh, the day after. Okay,
yeah, and we'll see. But hold on. Elon Musk has publicly endorsed an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, and that's from November 17. Man, so it's close. It's but their report clearly was I think it predates, and it was clearly all the mechanisms and machinations were done prior to that tweet. So
and Media Matters also, it's funny, as much as Elon seemed to be trying to stick his foot in the mouth of his own lawsuit with his interview, Media Matters their attorneys are probably not too happy with their client with Media Matters, because they're touting that these are all the people who fled X because of our articles. So basically each of the litigants are claiming that the advertisers seem implicitly to be claiming that the advertisers are fleeing because of what they themselves have done. So it's a weird situation where both litigants are.
So if they take credit, that does harm them a little if they take credit for it.
But I think Media Matters doesn't care. I think Media Matters is saying this is opinion, this is protected opinion. We're not even going to get to that question. But I think it's going to hurt them if they do. If they survive a motion to dismiss, then all this stuff is fair game.
All right, well, it's a hard shift. But speaking of being hurt, I'm curious what you guys think. Remember the plane and Mike Tyson?
Yes.
That was terrible.
The guy got exactly what he deserved. I'm not even a malicious type. He got what he deserved, but Mike Tyson.
He got what he was wanting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did want it. Why would you bother Mike Tyson? I've actually met Mike Tyson on the plane before. Yeah, so I was coming from Vegas because I'm a degenerate gambler. I know. So I'm flying back to New York from Vegas, and I'm like, so I see him get on the plane because he's first class. I'm like, hey, look, that's Mike Tyson. My wife is like, yeah, but we're not gonna talk to him because he's a rough guy. So I'm like, so I see him, I wave at him like a fangirl. I'm like, hi, Mike, But anyway, we come back. We're in Newark Airport. We get off the plane. I go to the bathroom, and guess what I see walking up next to me? It's freaking Mike Tyson in the bathroom, right? So I take my piss. I go wash my hands. I walk outside, and he comes outside. I'm like, Mike, hey, I'm a big fan, blah, 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 this. I'm like, can I get a picture? So he's like, yeah, sure, man. You take a picture. So we take a picture. My wife takes it. I'm like, but champ. So then he's like, yo, it's good to see you, brother, blah, 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 blah. He says, listen, you know what? It's funny. My girlfriend over here, she always gives me shit about not washing my hands in the bathroom. But I tell her I don't piss on my hands, and this guy's like touching me all over the head, shaking my head, and all that stuff.
Oh, no.
We just go out the bathroom. So I tell my wife, and she's like, well, what can you do? I'm like, listen, I'm not gonna give him any crap. Next thing I know, I'm gonna be out on the floor. This is Mike freaking Tyson here, so But that's my Mike Tyson story. I feel like
I've heard this story before. I've definitely heard you tell that story before. It sounds really familiar. I don't remember when you told it, but
Nate, he might have knocked you all the way into economy, baby.
Have you guys watched all the videos of this guy on the airplane? Because he was taunting him quite a lot, and then turning to his buddy and be like, whatever, making fun of him like extremely loudly.
I didn't know there were multiple videos. I just knew there was
what he was doing.
A longer one of him doing it and then getting hit.
That's a serious question, though. At what point is it still technically battery? That's one of those that we're all like, we would have wanted to do it ourselves. That guy was so obnoxious. But again, you're talking about the heavyweight champion of the world who was hitting him back. I mean, this person could have been extremely seriously injured
20 years ago.
Dude.
30 years.
Do you think? Do you want to get hit by Mike Tyson today?
No, obviously not. But I also don't walk over to a bear and start poking him in the groin. I mean,
right.
Come on.
One could argue that the intentional, provocation was him, asking for the opportunity to be litigious,
to be ass kicked.
Is that
because Because he knows Mike Tyson is violent. He has, an unstable temper. And I don't mind getting, pummeled in the face publicly by him because he has a lot of money and I could sue him for that. So I'm going to poke at him and prod at him and do everything that I want, and get his his dander up, and, and then get him to, hit me. I mean, it
doesn't excuse Tyson's battery, though. I will say that. It doesn't get Tyson off the hook. It just makes this guy look like a douche.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The jury's gonna want to find somebody to like, and if they see this guy acting like a tool, they'll side with Mike Tyson just solely out of that fact alone.
Yeah, you can win. He can win his lawsuit, but not win any money. They're like, all right, he won, but here's $500 for your pain and suffering.
Or the jury might just say this guy's insufferable. We're giving him nothing, and
I like the $500 outcome. I think that.
Or $1 is that would be a great $1
nominal damages.
And
because in theory, from a legal standpoint, Tyson is wrong here, right? But the other guy's just an ass, and so I could easily see a jury coming down that way.
But I think you could make a provocation argument, though. I think you can legitimately make a provocation argument.
I think he knew what he was doing. I think it was
unclean
intentional.
hands, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I was going to ask if he nibbled on your ear, but
Well,
I like
Nate knows all about Mike Tyson and
unclean hands. And
hold on.
Unclean hands. I do know.
Hold on. Unclean hands. That could be legitimately if you're scared, that could get into self-defense territory, right? Like what is he trying to put on me?
I also want to say too that there's parts that aren't on the video, right? So there's a lot of him sort of poking the back of the seat and taunting him and talking to him and then turning to his friend. And then there's a big chunk of time that's not recorded. And then all of a sudden he's getting punched by Tyson. So what happened in the interim? Did he actually reach over and grab Tyson? Did he do anything like that?
Well, if there's physical contact, if he battered him first, then, you could make a self-defense argument. Is it battery to kick the back of somebody's chair? Because you're not making direct
Somebody said he threw water on him.
touching.
Wasn't there a water bottle involved? Like the guy threw water on him or something?
Threw a water bottle at him or something.
I say I would flip this entire thing around. Well, first of all, I don't know if there's fighting words or something equivalent in whatever state this is in, but I'd go after the airline. I mean, how do they not get involved to stop this type of passenger-to-passenger aggression or harassment? Like, how do they let someone get that drunk on the airline? And why do they not get involved well before? I presume they had to have been notified about the problem. Plus, the guy got what he deserved, and I'm not. That stupid face that he's making at the end. At the end of the video, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sad I got a boo-boo on the side of my head." Yeah. But Mike Tyson should know better, obviously.
Well,
there is a point though, if somebody can get under your nerves so much that you just.
And Mike Tyson is known for having a rage disorder, for lack of a better. He's known for being ragey with the guy that he got into the bumper with prior incidents. He's known for snapping.
I want to ask you
like a vicious dog. You know how some states have like, well, if you have a notoriously vicious dog, then you're liable, even if it hadn't attacked anybody before. Is there such a thing for like boxers?
So boxers actually held to a higher standard because they have the licensure requirement. You're licensed and you can't. So it's just like
There have been people who have been prosecuted because of a high degree of training or ability to harm somebody else, that they are a lethal weapon. I think Steve might know some of that, but
what about that guy in New York that choked the guy? Aren't they saying, "Oh my God, he was in the military, so he needed
training"?
Training. But boxers, though, specifically, there's a higher scrutiny for assault cases with them because they are trained.
I got this guy registered here. I went through the TSA. I went through the airlines.
Welcome to the gun show.
Both of them, or just the one, just the right one?
I went through the when you have to do this at the airline, and I was like, I was on the verge. Like, I'm surprised you let me through with these guns, and I was like, that would be the bad joke to make when flying.
Do the Three Amigos flex while you're in there.
Oh, wow.
1,000. Yeah.
The news of the day. I'm surprised we haven't mentioned it. George, what's his name? George
Santos.
We're going to get to that. Yeah. And Saturday O'Connor also passed away. That's
that's sad.
Rest in peace. Well, I mean, 93 is pretty good. And to her credit, she's been retired for a few years. So she actually left and enjoyed a little bit of retirement before plotzing.
You
if
said
you will.
you
When
said
did she leave the
Right after
bench? I
Henry
can't remember.
Kissinger, who made it to 100. You know, that
Yeah.
was
She
like
left,
the three. It's always three in a row.
10 years ago or
Yeah,
better.
she was replaced by what's her name, right?
Sotomayor.
Yeah, Sotomayor.
Oh, I thought you said Sinead O'Connor, and I was just looking to see that she's
No, she's been
she's
dead a
still,
little longer.
she's still alive.
No, she's dead too. Sinead is dead
She's
too.
dead too.
No,
Yeah.
you're looking.
Yeah,
I wanted
she
to
did
say
like a
George
year ago.
Soros instead of George
Yeah.
Santos.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She's been dead for like seven hours.
The Pope
She
already
died. Sinead
Yeah,
was
a while
really
ago.
sad. She lost her son and then just died.
Hold on, I didn't hear that. I would have
Was
made
it
that
a year
joke.
ago? 6 months
Aaron-
ago? I don't know.
Yeah.
Her
That's
son-
what the
yeah, her
Vatican
son
wants
had-
you to think.
Her son had drug problems, mental health problems. I believe he took his own life, and she couldn't live without him. It was very tragic.
That's terrible.
She had
But
a
I
very,
don't-
very tragic life. I mean, she was a beautiful singer. I really loved her music. But yeah, very
But
sad.
it's weird. I don't think she actively took her own life though. It was like she literally was heartbroken. You know how some of those couples that
Jesus.
one dies
no.
and then the
Yeah,
other.
Well, you know, it's
Broken
happening with
breast.
Carter too.
I'm not sure about the cause of death.
It
I could
says
have been
19.
mistaken.
She was 56 years old. Cause of death was not stated. Following day, I just googled this. Yeah, well, broken heart syndrome, as it's
It's a
colloquially
real
referred
thing.
to, it's a real thing. So it's that's. I didn't know
Yes.
Jimmy Carter's got to go that way too. I give him 30 days.
Oh, I can't
Well,
believe he's
I've
still
been
there.
saying-
I give 80 years to that woman.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
pictures of him at that funeral, holy cow, he looked like a zombie in that wheelchair.
Well, he's been in hospice for months. I mean, he was supposed to already be gone. I mean, literally, month after month, they're saying we're hoping he makes it through the end of the month. So it's not.
Yeah.
He's surprising everyone, and
need-
he might get 100. On that note, who was it? Oh, somebody
Henry
just
Kissinger.
passed.
Yeah.
Henry.
No,
Yeah,
Henry Kissinger.
He was 100.
But, there was
102,
somebody
I think.
else who just passed, and they were 99. Oh, Charlie Munger just passed, and he was 99 years and 11 months.
Bob Barker made it
he
as
was
close
like
to 100
Betty
without
White.
going over as you could.
Yeah, Betty White. Betty White was
Betty White, yep.
17 days from turning 100. So, can you imagine that? You're right on the market. Never mind.
You know what? I don't think they'll one way or another. They're not going to care. 100. Yes. And now,
I don't know.
Stardust.
It's something, but okay. So the next story, this one's a bit darker, but I'm curious what you guys think about this one here. Sorry, and be careful. We can't say the S word. Please don't say the S word, because YouTube beats the hell out of my channels every time anybody does that.
Don't say the S word. YouTube beats the hell out of the channel.
No, that's fine. You could say offs, tops. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but
Self-unaliving.
Roblox.
self-deleting or what have you, but that is a weird case. The daughter said, here's gun.
I hate
That's
these
a little
cases. I
different,
hate these
yeah.
cases. I hate them because my default is always to not criminally punish somebody for the intentional wrongful acts of a third party. That's the default. That should be the default. And I just see more and more that people are being criminally charged for not doing anything wrong themselves, not doing the pew-pewing themselves or whatever, and are being charged or sued and all this stuff. And it's just
Crumblies.
frustrating.
Yeah,
But
this
wouldn't this-
Crumblies all over again.
Couldn't this be like a whole, if I know somebody's going to rob a bank, I give them the gun, and then I'm just as guilty
that-
as the bank robber.
Well, yeah, but that's fine, though.
If
There's
assisted
more to this,
suicide,
though.
if
Like
assisted,
that,
oh, sorry,
Conspiracy.
assisted S
Thanks, Nate.
is sorry.
Oh my God.
There is one wrinkle though.
There was one rule,
That's
Nate.
Yeah,
She
no,
had
I
rule.
violated the rule.
The mother had dementia.
Oh,
that may be something
Now,
different.
that's exactly
that's-
right.
That's a
Maybe
big
get
wrinkle.
Okay.
immersed-
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a wrinkle.
That's different.
I was going to ask.
Hey, it's Ian.
I was going to ask the question as to whether or not I think it seems by the consensus of the chat, Roblox is the right term. Whether Robloxing is illegal in whatever is Robloxing illegal in America?
Well, isn't it Michigan assisted Roblox is illegal? The Kevorkian statutes, right?
Mhm.
You
Well, it
can't-
was until he decided to
In
represent
in
himself
Oregon-
and then went down.
Oregon is
hardcore.
legal.
So,
Yeah.
so the reason that's such a massive
Canada,
wrinkle,
it's encouraged. Oh,
the
I'm
reason,
sorry. Go ahead.
no, the reason it's such a massive wrinkle, and that all the attorneys here were like, "Oh," is because when you have what David's correct in what he said, and I'm referring now to Michigan making law simple, and he's correct that when you have a third party who has mental capacity that is taking the final action, the law tends to look at that as being an intervening act. It separates the nexus from the wrong you committed to the actual result, and thereby one would hope or believe it should interfere with you being criminally liable for it. However, if the party has dementia or some other mental incapacity, all of a sudden that question as to whether it was an intervening act becomes by a thinking party becomes far flimsier, and you're far more, and there's more basis to attach liability for your conduct, because it's not really some third party thinking through and intervening. It's you kind of knew that you're setting this whole thing in motion, and that's more of a basis to attach liability.
I think along those lines, just want to intervene. It's a violation of federal law to have anyone in possession of a weapon like this who has dementia. So not only is there an issue about criminal liability with respect to the passing, but also the person that gave the possession of the weapon, in this case, the daughter, to the mother. We also need to know more facts, like what happened here. Was the mother asking for this? I looked through all the documents. I looked through any video I could find, and I couldn't see anything that really explained what happened here. So in my opinion, this is a clear violation of federal law, and unfortunately there's going to be consequences for that.
I wonder if the mother had expressed a desire before her dementia set in, when she was mentally culpable. And if that were the case, it's that might be an argument, possibly, that it was consistent and that maybe there, the intervening act aspect, what Joe's saying.
This is where I have absolutely support euthanasia, especially for dementia and in cases where the person will no longer be able to consent once dementia kicks in. But then, flip side, that's my opposition to what's going on in Canada, where euthanasia is now 4.1% of all death, because
I'm sure that's another great word there for Eric there. They chose there, Viva. But what Ian is describing there is the difference between giving a loaded gun to a 25-year-old or giving it to a 2-year-old, like, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
good analogy.
I hear the euthanasia are very good at math.
No.
Oh my! That's going to get you canceled.
Oh yeah, there it is.
They just can't get into Harvard.
What's a ute? What's a ute?
Oh boy, Media Matters is going to be on Chandler this afternoon.
That's right.
Come at me, bro. I'm ready.
Oh man. All right. Well, I mean, that one, I think that there's a lot of questions with it. I definitely want to see more facts, because
I didn't know
it's easy
dementia.
to slam it, but I can feel sympathetic too. If anybody has had to deal with somebody in that kind of condition, it sounds like it could be a very painful, hard story, just all around.
Well, when it's your parent, you have to imagine. I mean, who knows? They might have had a terrible relationship, but I have known people who have watched their parents suffer through illnesses and be in the position where, that person was suffering and they had to quietly ask hospital staff to sort of let them unplug things. It's stuff like that
don't hold back. Let them have all the morphine they want.
Well, that's the lawful way they do it. Give them the trigger and let them do it, like the morphine dispenser, and let them do it. It's
well, that's in Canada, not in the U.S. But the other thing
no, it's here. It's here. My father was terminal with it, and he had literally fentanyl patches and morphine, and he had no limit. He could have as much morphine as he felt was necessary.
Yeah, same thing with my sister.
So maybe that's a topic for a different day. That's sort of getting around the rules, I think.
Yeah.
But it's much like, it's like the people that unalive their spouses because they don't want to get a divorce, for whatever reason. But there's things you can do if you have a parent that needs assistance. You don't necessarily have to be the one that provides it for them. You could go to,
How is it like that? I don't. What are you talking about? With
I don't know what he's saying either.
That's totally.
That was like an Elon tweet
in my head. Okay.
Roblox. He meant Roblox, people.
That makes no sense to me.
Okay, so people so I was thinking of the dentist in Colorado that poisons his wife because he wanted to be with his mistress instead of just getting a divorce. You think of this woman who wants to Roblox her mother because she doesn't want to take care of him. But there are procedures. You can go to the probate court and have a guardian appointed and send them off to a hospital.
You're missing something completely. I mean, it could be that, or it could be that this is, a woman who was suffering and she knew what she wanted. I mean, look at Robin Williams. He knew that he was going to have a disease that was going to progress. He chose to Roblox himself.
Is that is that story about Robin Williams confirmed?
I heard I thought it was the David Carradine route.
He definitely.
It was my understanding.
A disease. He had this disease. I forget. It's like a cousin to Lou Gehrig's. It's one of those bad neurological.
I'm not talking about the mother's perspective. I'm talking about the daughter who's now currently being charged. One of her statements was, it's a pain to be a 24/7 caregiver. Well, you don't have to take on that responsibility, people. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, it depends on
I'm
where
not
you
sure
are.
if you understand what that's
you.
like, David, necessarily, with all due respect.
And also, it depends on what. Can you afford it? Can you give up your house? Can you? Yeah. Who's going to pay for it? Because my mother had Parkinson's disease and was terminal, and my dad was dying of cancer, and he had to take care of her. It was a complete, utter nightmare.
So the answer is Roblox is help the system.
No, I'm not saying
watching somebody you love deteriorate.
I didn't say that is an answer. I'm just saying that you can't assume that care or help is available. It would be nice if it is, but it depends on where you are. It depends if it can be budgeted. They could have too much money or not be poor enough. I know it sounds weird.
But you're making an argument.
What I'm trying to advocate is don't go to the Roblox.
Yes.
There are other avenues. This is what I'm trying to advocate.
I just want to weigh in before this conversation dies and say that I think that it's always morally sus to help someone self-delete. I don't think that there's any. You cannot paint a situation where I would say like helping someone self-delete is something that society should accept. I think it's terrible immorality.
And in this case, let's not forget we're talking about somebody who has extremely diminished capacity from what we're talking about. You're handing them some type of tool and say, I wouldn't trust that person to fill out a credit card or go to the store with, but I'm going to trust them with the firearm. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, also in Canada, bringing it back to Canada, where they want to expand the Robloxing to the mentally ill, and my argument against that is that you can't consent to begin with. So you're and by the way, Robin Williams had Lewy body dementia, which is like Alzheimer's. So yeah, the idea that you would let the person who's mentally incapable do that is the problem in and of itself. Whether or not they're on the way and they want to do it before they get there, and they're worried that if they get there, they're not going to allow it to happen. That's where you can have some nuance in this particular discussion, but. Anyhow, it's a terrible thing.
All right, well, let's get to something happier. I think this is a good one for Ian Corzine. I don't know if you saw this, but judge blocks the TikTok ban in Montana, which doesn't surprise me at all. It seemed kind of sketch that the state legislature is just saying, oh, we're going to ban an app. But have you gotten a chance to look at this, Ian, or anybody else? It just came in. You're muted.
Still muted.
You're muted.
Your mic's muted.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Being a TikTok user, I'm happy about it. I didn't get a chance to look at the decision yet. I don't know if anybody else has. What are the legal? Is it a technical
Montana?
Yeah. Substance.
Oh my God! I spent an hour and a half reading through it on air last night. So yeah.
Good. Let's go. Tell us about it. And what do you think?
So he basically goes. He dissected this case 9 ways to Sunday, and all the factors that come in: freedom of speech, Commerce Clause, whether this is exclusively a federal power, what the basis of the charge, what the charge was, and understand that this is not a decision on the case; it's a decision on a motion for a temporary restraining order, because the movements are looking to keep the law from going into effect. It's supposed to go into effect on New Year's, and they want to keep the law from going into effect. So he was judging it from a yardstick of trying to figure out exactly whether he really spent, out of 45 pages, he spent 41 pages going on about the likelihood of success. Because whenever you're moving for a temporary restraining order, you have to establish likelihood of success, balancing of equities, and irreparable harm. So likelihood of success means they're likely going to win. Balancing of equities means basically what does justice demand? And he pointed out that in a case where you're dealing with a government, it's really what's in the public's interest, what helps the public more. And then when you talk about irreparable harm, well, free speech and First Amendment issues are almost always going to be considered under the law irreparable harm. It means something you can't really compensate with dollars. So when someone's First Amendment rights of any nature are being violated, that's usually going to qualify as irreparable harm in the eyes of the law. The interesting thing that I thought is he was very torn about whether or not to apply a free speech standard based on strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny. And the question that he spent a great deal of time fixating on, and seemed actually he ended up coming to the conclusion that it's probably not strict scrutiny, because when do we apply strict scrutiny versus intermediate scrutiny when it comes to free speech? Well, if someone is expressing an opinion and the government is trying to quash a particular side on an issue, that is where we're going to apply strict scrutiny. But when the government is limiting speech in general of all folks, that is not going to get a strict scrutiny analysis. That is going to get an intermediate scrutiny analysis, which is easier for the government to overcome. And he said even using that intermediate scrutiny structure, he still thought that the law was overly broad, and that it might not actually have the effect of stopping what Montana legislature was looking to stop. Montana legislature gave a very convoluted explanation as to why they're banning TikTok. Because on the one hand, they're saying we want to protect our kids from basically watching TikTok and doing stupid, potentially dangerous things like tripping people and trying to make them fall face first into cement.
Is that the latest TikTok trend?
No, they listed off like 30 different stupid things that Gen Z does on TikTok, and the other thing is it's also controlled by China, and China is going to now be getting access to information, and they're going to be engaged in espionage against our citizens. So they sort of, those are two very different reasons that Montana glommed together into one as to why they're going after TikTok. And the judge was basically saying the reason you're not going to meet intermediate scrutiny is because with respect to them getting data, anyone could buy data. Mm-hmm. Just because they're getting through TikTok doesn't mean, and you don't have any evidence that they are doing this. The state claimed that TikTok had given President Xi and his gang access into or super user accounts where they could just look at anyone's information there. But he's like, well, what's to stop them from buying it from Meta or Facebook or whomever, the same data, and they can
Instagram
buy it that
sold
way.
it.
Yeah,
I think they've given it before.
So he's like, so what's that doing? And it's not really having the effect that you're looking for. And you also seem very much like it's targeting one entity, because Montana said as soon as TikTok is sold, this ban is lifted. So they said, so he had issues with that it seems as if you're targeting a specific group, which makes the law have issue. And for all of these bases, the court found the likelihood of success and enough of a basis to basically say that we're gonna apply this stay and stop the law from going into effect.
Well, I just have to say I don't like the application of the intermediate scrutiny test on this. Just because it applies to everyone equally, I think that's BS.
Why?
Well, first of all, I don't like the intermediate scrutiny period. The question is the government infringing on someone's right to free speech, yes or no? But I don't like this made-up rule of intermediate scrutiny. And okay, so let's say we're going to pass a law that applies to everyone equally, and you can't challenge the government. You can't say anything bad about the government. It applies to everybody. We're going to use intermediate scrutiny. It's just I don't like that argument.
Okay, so this is the interesting thing. So he was analogizing to, let's say, the government. Let's say there's a radio that is giving off cancer. There's radiation coming from a radio. So now in that particular analogy, which I think is not a bad analogy, because they're basically saying this is something. So there's speech coming out of the radio. So the government says we're going to get rid of this radio. So the question is, is getting rid of the radio, that's really just overall speech, which it's limiting speech, but it's not really about the content of the speech. It's a matter of the nature of the vehicle that the speech is coming through. There was also a very interesting analysis, which I agreed with the judge pretty strongly on, where he was talking about who has a cause of action here. And this is something I remember saying yesterday that I plan on discussing with all you guys today, which is that we talk about the difference between freedom to speak versus freedom to hear. So if you're a TikTok viewer, right, I want to have the freedom to hear what these people are saying on TikTok. I don't know that you have the same protection for the freedom to hear that the TikTok content provider has a freedom of speech. And I wanted to ask you guys if you think that the line should be exactly the same, and that they would have equal protection, or would you think that freedom to hear does not warrant the same protection as freedom to speak?
Isn't that the argument they used against blocking people on Twitter if you're a public official, that people have the right to hear what you're saying? I'm just asking.
No, that's a fair point. I think there should be some protections for freedom to hear. I just don't know that it should be as high a protection as freedom to speak.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you guys I really wanted to ask you legal philosophicals here, philosophers here, what you think is an appropriate, based on your, knowledge of law and background and stuff like that. What do you think is an appropriate way to look at freedom to hear in comparison to freedom to speak?
I'm not a lawyer, but I think they should be equal.
Because I don't think they should be equal. Personally,
the whole, it's always been said, like, you have a right to your thoughts and to your speech. You have a right to convey that, but you can't force anybody to listen. So that's sort of been the main focus of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But you're not forcing anybody to listen. You're just saying, do you have a right to hear what other people are saying? Mm-hmm. And I think that does comport, that is part of the freedom of speech, right? Yes. Do I have a right to read the newspaper? Should I be barred from purchasing a newspaper? Let's take it back to the old, right? We have freedom of the press, right? So the press New York Times can produce as many newspapers as they want, but a certain segment of society is not allowed to buy it, let's say. Would that be a violation of the First Amendment? I think it would. And so if you extrapolate that now to TikTok, people have the right to post things on TikTok. Okay. Now, can you ban a certain segment of society from viewing those? I think you have a fundamental problem. I think you come up hard against the First Amendment.
You're suppressing my right to information. I mean, you're literally suppressing me. I think that they're equal. It's just, it's the reverse. The same way you're chilling somebody from talking, you're chilling me from hearing it. What's the point if they're talking unless people have the ability to hear it? To me, you can't have one without the other.
I'll explain the basis why I think you can make an argument for a distinction. Your speech is your ability to express yourself, which is how it's articulated in the First Amendment, is an innate part of who you are. We look at the basis for the Bill of Rights and civil liberties is we're respecting the individual's freedoms. That doesn't mean we're going to provide the individual with access to whatever it is that the individual wants necessarily to access. They might want to access Mar-a-Lago, but we're not going to let them access that.
But you're explicitly blocking something. That's where I have the problem. Yeah. It's not that I have a right to anything, because you could say, hey, that's not free. You got to pay for it. You don't have a right for it just because you want it. You got to pay for it. Well, that's what they're doing. But if somebody is putting something out there for the purpose of being free, or the purpose for everyone, you in effect are blocking my access. You are blocking my choice, and that is part of my identity.
You're the speaker or the listener?
Both, and because part of my identity is what I consume, right? What I consume is part of my identity. It's what I choose to be. That's what I'm choosing to inform me and help represent my thoughts. So I don't feel like you can have one with the other.
I think it's entitled to some protection. To my mind, I think there is a difference as far as the level that we should bend over backwards to ensure protection. I think freedom of speech, that if we ever step on freedom of speech, that's a far more egregious offense than limiting your access to hear necessarily. I think that we still should protect your freedom to hear. I'm not saying that that's irrelevant. I just think that it's not the same level.
Your argument is Linda Yaccarino's. Freedom of speech, but not
I see what
that's literally your argument. I know. I'm just
I know you're making a great point. But my point is, whose rights are being violated? I think she's wrong, because she's not government, but if she were government, to the extent that she is controlled by government, as alleged in Missouri v. Biden, so one might. So it's affecting your ability to reach other people. That's your speech. What I'm saying is, if you're talking to Ian and I stop him from hearing you, I might have violated your right, Eric. I don't think I violated necessarily the same way Ian's right. That's my point. And so I could be wrong and stop from it because of what I'm doing to you, Eric, but not because of what I'm doing to Ian. I mean, really, this is really a little bit more philosophical than it is, as far as it's a little more esoteric than as far as being pragmatic, because at the end of the day,
what if I was to put it this way? Okay, so you have the right to challenge the government. You could say whatever you want. and the government says, all right, if you want to sit, you can talk for however long you want about how bad Biden is, but you have to do it in a blacked out, soundproof room. You're the only one in there, and you can talk to your heart's content. All right. So
like I said, that would be affecting me, or in that case, and it's the same thing as me saying it's affecting Eric, and it could be wrong on that basis. But it's not wrong because you're kept from hearing me. It's
Absolutely,
my speech is limited.
Well, let's say there's a laptop.
That's the nature of the wrong.
Let's say there's a laptop and there's some information, and I'm about to go pull a lever for somebody tomorrow, and this information, which is widely available, I am not able to hear it. So now I am making a decision based on information that you've held back, Joe. You have prevented me from hearing this.
Right. So
it's the same basic principle, because it's very important that I have the ability to listen to whatever this might be, as long as it's not criminal.
You're saying freedom of speech, freedom of reach versus prevented. And one is different in that the information is accessible but not being amplified. The other one is it's actually being suppressed, like with the TikTok ban on the app. So one is saying, well, you can still have it, but I don't know how the government would amplify it. I see Joe is thinking about what I'm saying.
I am. I also have one other question that I wanted to pick your brains on. I want to get Southern Law in on this one, because
you're going to pick Winston's brain with this one.
Yeah, go on. And that is, TikTok made the claim that we are editors because we curate how things. How information is shared, processed, and whatever, and they're stepping on our freedom of speech and how we help share this with the public. And the question I had was, this is now a platform that is claiming that we're engaging in speech by having our platform. Now, all along, they got Section 230 protection because they're not editors, they're just distributors. And here's TikTok coming along and saying, hey, we're editorializing here. Everything we're doing is a creative process. It's not just we're editorializing. We're not just editing. We're a creator now. So you tell it. So how is it that we can possibly look at Section 230 as having any viability, any justification, when you have a massive platform with 150 million active users per month coming out there and saying we are editors of all the content that comes out here? And maybe Ian, you're the tech guy. Maybe you can weigh in on this as well. Because don't you think that this raises all sorts of flags as to why Section 230 should apply, and that we should view them as a distributor rather than as being some actual content creator themselves, based on their own admissions in these pleadings or in this motion?
Steve?
Well, I was going to let Ian weigh in on that because I agree he's more the subject matter expert. I agree, though, to set it up for Ian with Joe's point that I think all these places are basically editors to some degree, because while I'm sensitive to what they tried to accomplish with 230, that you want to facilitate the flow of information, they've changed that to what I consider not just trying to ban, say, illegal things, but viewpoint discrimination. And so in my view, they were editors for quite a long time ago. But let's see what Ian says.
Well, it's funny you say that, Steve, because I have the exact same opinion. I mean, I think it's just been very clear from the beginning of social media that they're editors, that they're controlling the flow of information, and that they should be treated as such. So to me, this is not so much a revelation. I tend to look between the lines on this stuff, and I hate to say it, but I've had this view for the longest time. So we really definitely need to change the law to reflect this.
But if we change the law, how would platforms ever be able to survive unless we're just going to make it incumbent on them to be gleaning for defamation all the time? And won't that encourage them to be that much? The only other alternative they would have is to change their structure altogether and basically say that they really are being hands off. And to pick up on what Steve Southern Law said, by the way, one of the things the court pointed out is that if you're targeting a specific viewpoint, that is a far more egregious offense and raises up to strict scrutiny.
Joe, you just reverted to what was supposed to be the original intent of 230. It's hands off unless it's illegal. Then they do something, and otherwise they don't, and they don't endorse it by virtue of it being there. So that's what it should be. Unless it's illegal, the platform has no business, when it's one of these platforms, getting involved in it. But it's not where it's at now.
Totally agree. Now, David, you sent me this. So let's.
Yes, I wanted to do one white pill before I have to duck out. This is an actual. I mean, I'm going to say it's a white pill, and then I'm going to black pill it for everybody. I'm going to be Debbie Downer. You guys know the Walrus Whisperer? He's the guy that basically took the fight to Marineland in Canada. He got famous because a walrus had imprinted on him, and so he had this relationship with the walrus. Then he got fired from Marineland, which was like Canada's Miami Seaquarium. 10-year litigation, fought like hell, got the Smooshy the walrus relocated. He set his sight on the Miami Seaquarium, and they were protesting down there just before the summer. And I went down and shot a video and saw this walrus, Romeo the walrus, living in a swimming pool.
You mean a manatee?
What did I say? A manatee. Yes, a manatee. Romeo and Juliet, 2 manatees. One had been there since 1957 in a freaking swimming pool. It's a big swimming pool, but it's not that big. And so Phil Demers, the walrus whisperer, started boycotting, protesting, raising awareness, flying a drone over, showing the condition that this walrus was living in. And so the white pill news of the day is manatee. Well, you know what I mean when I say it, okay? It's imprinted on my mind. Well, the manatee, the white pill news of the day is at 67 years old, and the other one there, Juliet, is 50 some odd. They're being relocated to a sanctuary. So, I don't know how long they live and how much they have left to live, but somewhat of a happy ending to 67 years in captivity at Miami Seaquarium in a bona fide swimming pool.
So, Dave, in Florida, even animals go to retirement homes. That's what I'm hearing.
if they're lucky. If they're not, I mean, you should have seen it. It was atrocious. I went to the Miami Seaquarium for the protest, and then Phil, the guy's like, "Go inside and see how depressing it is." And I went in, and it was depressing. So that's the good news, I guess, to some extent.
Well, now the black pill, you gotta,
Oh no, the black pill was that's after a life of torture. I mean, after 67 years in basically solitary with another walrus I said walrus again, a manatee in this disgusting pool. Now they finally get some freedom, and only after a dude like Phil Demers puts it on blast and makes things happen. So.
Now, are they going to be in a safe environment though? Because obviously they're not adaptive to being in the wild.
No, but they're manatees, man. It's not like they're orcas where they have to be part of a pod where they have to hunt. These are freaking manatees. They go around and they eat grass off the bottom of the ocean. It's like I don't know what they need to know to survive. I don't know what the nature of the sanctuary is.
Not getting hit by boats and stuff.
Well, but even manatees in the wild have that problem as well. Mm-hmm. But no, dude, I don't know. But it's not like a complex hunting carnivorous animal. This is they're called a sea cow for a reason. You release a cow into the wild, it's going to eat grass.
And they're provided with underwater bingo and other activities they can do to stay entertained.
It was so shocking the conditions in which they live. But so that's it. Now I do have to go duck out, so I'm going to say farewell to everybody. But enjoy the weekend, everybody. Good to see you all again.
Thank you for coming, man.
All right, see you soon. Bye.
Later.
All right. Next one, I give to Steve, Southern Law. What's going on here with this XDA, the Ahmaud Arbery situation? Can you give us some background and what's happening?
Yeah, so, of course, we always hear they're never accountable, talking about the state police, DAs or whatever. And that's, of course, often true. But in this case, the DA is charged with violation of oath at a felony level. And I think some kind of obstructing charge, it's misdemeanor level for her involvement with one of the defendants in that case, who I think had worked for her. So she had tried to get those charges dismissed and was unsuccessful. She has to stand trial for her behavior in that case.
Now, when is it really a giant problem, and when is it discretionary to a prosecutor? I mean, is this problematic potentially?
I don't think it's about her not bringing charges. I think it was her alleged discussions with this guy and attempts to protect him. That's the allegation.
Steve, I got a question for you. What's the motive here? I looked at this story myself a little bit. It says that she told the police officers on the day of the shooting that they should not arrest Travis McMichael. Did she have a long-standing relationship with him?
I think he used to work for her. Yeah.
Okay.
He was her chief investigator at the DA's office.
Mm-hmm. Well, was it the father or the son? Because the son was the one, I guess, that actually had the shot.
Father.
Yeah, the dad was.
They all got hit ultimately with all the charges, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So. But if that's what she did, that's still within the realm of prosecutorial discretion. I mean, it doesn't matter. Nicholas Cruz, like that entire situation, the DA could have said, no, we're not arresting him today, and we're not going to charge it. I mean, they could do that if they wanted to.
It probably depends on what she did, though.
Yeah.
She said, "Let's don't charge this guy," or what really.
Yeah, it sounds like she may have done a little more there.
I mean, maybe, but the thing is, she's going to trial where that will be explored, right? Whether she did a criminal act or not, and so there's at least here somebody on the law enforcement side who's going to have to answer for this on the actual prosecution side. So that is very rare, right? Because of the immunity they generally do have, whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, they have a lot of immunity.
Wow. Okay, that's next one, and then we're going to get to a bigger story. This one is on Sean here. An attorney is suspended for throwing a Pringles can with human feces at a victim's advocacy center. The one thing that stood out to me when I read the article was that the attorney reported that he'd done it a bunch of times.
Yes.
Yes. So why am I arrested now?
What a great defense.
Yes.
What a great defense.
Well,
Hire this attorney.
Well, the best part about it was he threw it at a victim's advocate's at their office as he's going to court that morning for a murder case where that advocacy group is there on behalf of that victim in that case. So he literally threw the turds, and like 10 minutes later, he's in court with the advocate.
And remember the Pringles slogan: "Once you pop, you can't stop."
Oh, Steve is on today.
Well, I think he said he did it a bunch of times only in his disciplinary proceedings, right? And I think that was basically because he was going to court that somehow involved this group. Later, he was trying to say that this had nothing to do with his legal practice. This was like ancillary from it, right? And they had, and he just does this randomly.
Yeah,
isn't that sort of like saying everybody else is speeding,
matter,
but
he's
the same guy who's doing all of them? It's confusing.
But David, part of the issue though was he was on he drove there's video he drove down the alleyway, then came back and then did it. So yeah, it's just if it really was just random, that was the Supreme Court was like, we don't believe the idea this was just random. So
I think it was funny that the punishment is going to actually be suspended after 6 months. So it's actually you can get away with doing it 10 times and still practice law.
Yes.
Okay, so to keep with the theme, many people would agree. Speaking of turds, we have George Santos has been expelled from the House. So that's what you call transition, folks. It's called
that was much better than the last one. Yeah.
All right, so Joe,
sixth member of the House,
fellow New York type, is
Joe's neighbor.
You've been involved with him. No, but you are in Spaces with the guy, and you've been studying this case. And there are interesting elements to it. Like obviously, most people are like, okay, this guy, he admitted doing blah 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 whatever. However, he has not been convicted, and he has been tossed out before getting convicted. So there are some questions, and there's not exactly a surplus of Republican representatives.
There's 6 people who have ever been thrown out of the House, and they can fall into 3 categories: those who have been convicted of a crime, those who were engaged in the Civil War, like fighting for the South in the Civil War, and George Santos. He's the first person to say what you want about George Santos. And there's a lot of things you can say about him. And there was a whole House Ethics Committee report skewering him. I mean, they were skewering him that he's basically lying about how much money he has in order to encourage people to loan money and pilfering money and all these different things, which at the end of the day sound really, really terrible. A lot of gross allegations about him being a thief, in addition to the well-established lies that he said in order to get into office. I'm not going to defend him as a person, and purportedly his lying, he was such a fabulist. He's a fabulist. He's such a fabulist that his own staff came to him and said, you have a problem. Like you have seriously like a mental issue. Like they were concerned that he just has such a propensity for lying about things there's no reason to lie about, that they actually address this with him.
If Gavin Newsom's staff would only go to him and say the same thing. Oh,
amen, brother, amen. Yeah, no. So his treasurer Nancy Marks, who was his treasurer for 3 years, ended up giving he's pointing fingers at each other as to what happened with some of the improprieties with the finances, which apparently there were a great deal of improprieties. I don't know how common that is in Congress or not. I'm sure that many people in Congress had that issue. But there's, the claims about him being not just a terrible liar, gross liar about things that are obvious lies, but a thief as well. They're very, very strong claims. And at the same time, my position is, dude has not been convicted of anything. Of anything. You want to do this to him? And he also claims he wouldn't run for re-election in 2024. So, and his trial is supposed to come up, I think, in September, because he's already been indicted 23 times for different fraudulent activities. There was an additional indictment of 10 counts and a superseding indictment for additional 13. So the DOJ is definitely going very hard after this guy, and you can all speculate as to whether that's because he's so evil or because the DOJ is weaponized against a guy who's fairly MAGA in his opinion, and either one of those, you can find legitimate basis to make that claim. So I'm not defending him as a person or anything that he's done. He's probably a very slimy, terrible human being. I'm simply saying, I personally would not, if I was sitting in the House, I would say, look, he may have done all these things, but innocent in the eyes of the law, and I'm not going to strip him of his ability to serve in Congress until he's convicted. That's my personal opinion.
Well, that's what Matt Gaetz said in an open argument. I mean, he just said, listen, I'm not going to defend him, but it happens. It's a very serious situation when someone's expelled from Congress. It doesn't happen very often, as Joe has said. I did a Twitter post just recently about what I think George Santos should do. And frankly, even if he's not going to run, even if he's going to go to jail, maybe he won't go to jail, he probably should appeal. This is something that I think needs to be decided, because I think what's going to start happening is, I think Joe alluded to this, is the weaponization of expulsion. Once you do this slippery slope where you say, listen, because he's a dirty liar, or maybe people don't like his disposition, and you can read between the lines on that, we're just going to expel people. And I know there's a 2/3 majority required, but these days they can do that. My thought is that actually there is, I don't know if there's precedent, but there is a route that he can file a federal district court violation of 5th Amendment, 14th Amendment, whatever the allegation is, and then pursue it that way so that we can change this and actually get a court ruling on expulsion, because it's getting ridiculous out here.
But I think you're going to run into the courts are going to stay away from telling. The House is allowed to make its it's a political question. The House is allowed to make its rules.
Yeah.
So
likely true. That's
true. I don't know.
He's a Fifth Amendment right, though.
That's the same thing. Okay,
stop for a second. Isn't it going against the voter? We're talking not only his rights, but what about the people who put him in office? Again, right or wrong, because he's not convicted, so he hasn't actually doing it. Is it a political question? Well, then that means people's votes don't count.
Well, the legal. When we say political question, the courts can't look at. So, for instance, impeachment. For instance, impeachments are non-reviewable by the courts because the House impeaches and the Senate convicts. So, if they choose to, as long as they follow the process, then there's nothing the Supreme Court or any of the.
Is that in the Constitution?
Yes. The impeachment clause.
Well, but Nate, you're talking about impeachment, about conviction.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about impeachment and conviction, but also the courts have essentially the expulsion is kind of this in the same vein in which the House Representatives is the master of the expulsion. So as long as they follow the stuff in Article 1, they too can then, they can essentially expel any of their members for anything.
But to be clear on the law, though, because I haven't really looked into this as the first broke today, but I'm curious. There is a distinction between expulsion and impeachment. Impeachment would have to go through the Senate. This doesn't have to go through the Senate. This is just expulsion saying you can't come, you're not allowed to sit at the cool kids table.
Yeah, expulsion is
worse than that. You can't come.
Right.
It's an authority vested in Article 1 only to the House Representatives. They have the right to expel, and it doesn't give a reason why they have to. They can expel someone for drunkenness or for anything. It doesn't say.
And that's why it's a constitutional question.
And the right of the House and the Senate to do this was literally discussed in the Constitutional Convention.
Yes,
by all the parties.
They would discuss this.
But here's the question: Could he run for re-election after he's been expelled? I would think so.
It depends upon its conviction too.
Right, but I'm saying because he actually said if I get expelled, I'm going to run for re-election and I'll win.
He's not going to win. But
I don't know. That's his claim. I'm saying. But my question is, if he were to win, does that mean that they would have to have a new expulsion vote, or would the one from this current session carry over. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
There's no precedent for that.
Yeah, I know there's no precedent because I know in impeachment is impeachment, conviction, and then if you're ineligible to run for any other position in the federal government. So impeachment, yes, if you're impeached and then they convict you and say you can't run. But for expulsion, I'm not sure if that also follows.
Yeah, I think because I actually think the expulsion might not carry over into the next session. I think they could expel him again in theory. Let's play this out. He runs and wins. Would they say, well, you're already expelled? Or would he say, no, you need to take a new vote because this is a new session of Congress?
Absolutely.
I think that would probably be the process.
Get a new vote, right?
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
assuming that probably would be. But
I think I also want to mention that, I know, Nate, what you're talking about, but I do think this is something that should be decided by the Supreme Court because I think it's ridiculous. Like, I don't know how you can just argue, hey, listen, it's just a legislative matter. Yeah, that happens. What if this starts happening a lot more? What if we have 5 and 10 people expulsed or removed from Congress just because people don't like them? Before we didn't have that problem because there was a standard that was upheld in the legislature, but now that standard is not upheld. So I think it's a real danger.
I agree with you guys on principle. The bar should be convictions, right? And I also agree that there have been people charged with the exact same thing George Santos has been charged with and served and told they were convicted. So I get all that. But I'm a common man, and I'm just going to say it from a comment. If there's any job in the world that allows you to lie about all your qualifications, get that job, and then they find out, guess what? You didn't go to the school you went to. You don't have the records you don't have the certificates you got. The whole matter of fact, your name is a freaking lie. And then they find that out. There's no job in the world that allows you to keep that job.
Hold on. Can people impeach him?
No.
What I'm saying, okay, so
maybe that's the recall.
Or recall. No, I was going to say maybe that's the hole in the system because we said, is there any job? Well, yes, he has a job. He works for his district. He works for those voters. Those are his boss, not Congress. He doesn't report to the speaker. According to what I understand of this, I thought that the community or the district voted them in, and they are technically who hired them and who are in charge of them.
Yes.
So I don't think your analogy quite works.
There is no mechanism for them to do this. So what I'm saying is that when he's in the House, and that's it, he's serving for those 2 years. So the only mechanism would be expulsion or censure, if something like that. So I unfortunately, I understand, hey, the arguments on the other side, but I think for this issue, I think the arguments for both sides are fair. I think if George Santos, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, and this is not like these are things that are even in debate. These are things that are absolutely true. Then it's kind of like, okay, do you expel him or do you allow him to serve the 2 years? Is it and if conviction is the bar, then like the other side was saying, point to it in the Constitution because it doesn't say that. They created their own precedent. And that precedent was this conviction precedent, but now they're saying, well, we're going to confirm that. If we can verify a lot of these things are true, then why should we wait 2 years? Because as they were saying on the other side, that for 2 years, that it takes 2 years for a conviction anyway. So you're going to let him serve this term, then possibly serve another term until he gets convicted. That was kind of the issue what they were saying when we know these facts to be true through their investigation. So I don't know. Well, I do think what Ian's saying is true, though. It does set a bad precedent. I do agree with that. And
it's the Republicans who did it, by the way. All they had to say is no. I mean, so technically, the Republicans did it.
They might have been afraid to say no, that they're going to look like they're siding with him and that they're supporting his. It's possible, or it could be it's a uniparty thing where they're basically like, yeah, this guy's too MAGA for us. It really can. Unless you're in the Capitol, it's very speculative as to exactly what the basis.
No, I would say probably typically the Republicans tend to be more into the honor and dignity and that kind of stuff. I don't think the Democrats would do this personally. I just don't think they would do this with their own party. That's my opinion. I can be completely
themselves,
wrong.
They wouldn't.
No, if he was a Democrat, I don't think this would have happened.
You're right.
I think it would have made it to conviction.
You're right. Unless he grabbed a woman's, private part of a woman, they wouldn't go after him.
But I will say this though. Even though I understand most of the people in this room don't like it, I do want to give the GOP a lot of credit ethically because they have a slim majority. They know this would hurt them politically, and they felt the conviction that, hey, we see enough where we're still going to do this anyway. I do think that has to be acknowledged, because this only hurts them, and helps the Democrats, because the Democrats going to take that seat. That was a Democratic seat before Santos, and it's probably going to be a Democratic seat after it. So I do give them credit for that they put that, it's all talk until something happens where you got to put your cards on the table, and they put their cards on the table. And I think, and for me personally, I think they made the right call, but I do give them credit for that, to say, okay, we're just not all talk. We're going to make it happen.
Well,
what do you mean? Give them position credit now, or is this a special election?
No, it has to be appointed by the governor now.
Well, no, it's there's enough time. So they have 10 days as of right now. The process is they have 10 days. They have to tell the governor. The governor has 10 days to start a special election. Then it's from that 10 days, there's 90 days, 60 to 90 days for them to campaign. The party heads of the Democratic Republican Party pick candidates, and then those candidates run in 90 days.
Oh, they can't just appoint like a senator?
No. Because it's a House seat, so it's a special election. It all depends, because it's timing. It's timing. If there's like a very short amount of time, then you can appoint. But here you get a special election.
I was going to say, boy, if you're going to get a special election for what, 10-month term by the time this is done or whatever.
I got it. I'm in there. I'll take care of it.
Okay, Joe. Well, on that note, let's go ahead and wrap up so Joe can focus on his campaign. Nate, what do you have going on?
Nothing. Let me see. I got a couple of interesting cases. I got the case of where there's the police officers go to a domestic violence call. See the guy comes out the door. He has a gun in his hand. Not pointing at the cops, has a gun down. The police, unfortunately, end his life. Then they find out they're at the wrong house. So and the police actually have a shootout with his wife, because the wife, after they gun him down, the wife starts shooting back at the police. So now it's kind of like, what do you do? Because the state doesn't want to pay, and the police are like, well, the family is like, well, we're technically at the wrong house. So that's like a big issue coming up. And then we're also going to be talking about the Indians, not the Indians chief, the kid from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now it's wild, because everything unfortunately nowadays is racist. So they took a picture. He was in blackface, but it was he was painted. His face was painted as the color of the team, half black, half red. Mm-hmm. But when he was on TV, they only showed the black half of the face.
Yes.
So literally, the guy's name is like Karen.
Actually, no, it wasn't CBS.
Yes.
It was Deadspin.
Yes.
The reporter cherry picked a shot of it and then made the statement. So it wasn't CBS.
Yes.
It's one guy. He happened to be named Karen for some reason.
Yeah.
Well-named individual. But anyway, that's an interesting case. And then the other shoe dropping is, well, it turns out that the kid is a
Native American, because that's what the spin was from the Democrats was like, okay, it wasn't blackface, because the people started putting pictures up of all these different teams from everybody, with half black, half team colors. So then the Democrats spit it and said, well, hey, listen, it's because he's wearing a Native American headdress. So that's what makes it obviously racist. But then come to find out the kid lived on a reservation and is Native American. So
his grandfather's like the head of the Chumash tribe.
Whoops.
So now it's kind of like, uh-oh. So now they're still trying to defend this guy. So now people are calling for the Karen guy to be fired from Deadspin, but Deadspin is standing behind him because so it's a whole mess. But that's what we're covering. So.
Well, Nate, aren't you the one who keeps telling me that they may have no case for defamation because of racism's an opinion?
And this, yes, but generally, racism is, as the courts have found, racism is an opinion. It's determining what is racist or not. It's subjective. I don't agree. I agree with you, but unfortunately, that's the state of the law right now. That's what Nick Sandmann had to unfortunately try to get over. But he had a little bit more, because they had said some other things that weren't that weren't just racist. Like he was there to antagonize and all that. So that got him over the hump. But the courts have generally said, by calling someone racist is subjective. What's racist to you, one person, is not racist to someone else.
I don't know. This kid, he's a really cute little kid. I think he gets a lot of sympathy. And that's
sure.
These adults are basically labeling this kid a racist. It's going to garner a lot of sympathy for the plaintiffs in this case, and hopefully
it may. I mean, he's a cute kid. I mean, and he looked completely like, just happy to be. I mean, just Great.
Oh, but this Sunday at the game, the Chiefs fans are all putting on black and red face in support of this kid.
Perfect answer.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Perfect answer. And I would love it if like some of the players had said, but the players were dancing with them too. And so it was.
Yeah, it was crazy. Oh, but one last thing I also want to talk about is the explosion of Me Too cases in New York. So if you guys haven't noticed, the past like 5 days, there's been an explosion of Me Too. Jamie Foxx, the mayor, every big name person, Cuba Gooding Jr., Jamie Foxx, so you name the artist. Axl Rose has been hit. So the reason why is New York. I'm calling it the Trump law. So New York passed this law to get Trump, and nobody's going to say that, but it's true. They passed the law to get Trump.
Carroll admitted that
yes.
Passed.
So they went and passed the law to get Trump, and the reason why they wanted to get Trump is because E. Jean Carroll was saying that Trump had blanked her 20 years ago. So New York law. So now under New York law, if it was a criminal offense, it's ex post facto, and you can't go back and change something in the past that's criminal or extend the statute of limitations. But for civil cases, the states can. So with the state of New York did is say, okay, we're going to open up a 1-year window that allows any survivor of sexual assault to sue that person. So that allowed E. Jean Carroll to sue Trump for blankety blank. She won, and then obviously had the defamation cases. So then you started seeing Harvey Weinstein lawsuits. Bill Cosby has been sued in New York. All these other people have been sued in New York. But now, right at the end of this, because it ended Friday, so it was like a couple of hours. But in that last 5 hours, you had lawsuits for some of the biggest names in Hollywood all of it come out because all these women were like, "Hey, we want some money too." So the lawsuits that have come out were insane. But obviously, Sean Puff Danny Combs, he settled his lawsuit right after it came out. There are a couple. Now
there's new ones
who have settled. Yeah, so all of those people have now. So now you have this rash of cases, but now the window has closed. So now we're going to just talk about those cases and whether this is actually fair that the state of New York extended the statute of limitations from essentially 5 years to the end of time to allow people to sue for sexual assault cases. Some of these cases are 50 years old, which is crazy.
By the way, breaking news. Somebody want to cover this later. Jussie Smollett headed back to jail.
Boom!
Conviction upheld.
I predicted
Bye-bye.
No,
I predicted this. I'm going to go on stream and scream about this. I predicted this.
Oh, I remember you saying that, Nate. I remember you saying that at the time, and I'm like, there's no way in hell an Illinois court is going to uphold this, but I'm happy to be wrong. I really am.
It was because the stupid DA. So those of you who don't, I don't want to keep us too long, but for those of you who don't know, what happens is the DA in Cook County, who is a crook, she would, I'm not defaming her, but she's a crook. But anyway, so she recused herself from the case. Now, for those of you who don't know, when the DA recuses himself from the case, what that means is that no one in that office can actually, because everybody's ability to prosecute comes from the district attorney. That's where they're assistant district attorneys. And the same thing for U.S. attorneys. They're assistant U.S. attorneys. So if the U.S. attorney has to recuse himself, then everyone whose power or ability to prosecute, they also have to recuse themselves. So what Kim Foxx did was recuse herself, but then still prosecuted Jussie Smollett. So the argument is that when he made his plea deal with Kim Foxx's office, that was a good plea deal. But the court came back and said, no, that wasn't a good plea deal because she had no authority to prosecute him. So essentially, it was just like some crazy person just prosecuting him out of nowhere. So what that led to was that Jussie Smollett then was able to be prosecuted again under Illinois law, and they made the argument that this was double jeopardy. But now, as all the case law from infinitum in Illinois said, is that if the prosecutor themselves don't have the legal authority to prosecute you, then no matter what deal you have, it's nonsense. So that's why I predicted that he would be going back to jail.
Well, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
What happened to your camera?
I'm not sure. It's like I went to the wrong one all of a sudden.
Joe left us.
Yeah,
Joe left us. Joe doesn't like us anymore. Oh, well, I'm sad. Someday I'll take my camera.
I honestly, and what I was thinking was going to happen is kind of like what happened to Cosby, where they're like, the prosecutor played games early on, but hey, they're going to side with the defendant. I'm glad they didn't in this situation, but I thought that's where they were going to go with it, was that line of reasoning to an extent.
I kind of thought that it might be upheld, but I didn't know if he was going to serve any more time. So I am happy to see that. It's not like he has the longest sentence in the world. What is it, like a month or something?
I think he had 3
Let's
months.
just say I didn't think it was that much.
Can he get Subway on his commissary? That's the real question.
Good question. And on that note, Sean, what do you have going on?
Not much going on. Just keep your eyes peeled. We got some more videos coming out, including one about a guy who the court ruled was too fat to commit a crime specifically. And I'll explain a little more about if you guys watch the video about what that crime was. But it's he got out of the charges, but it leaves a very awkward legal finding about his physique. So,
that is an interesting question.
Yeah.
Ian, what do you have going on?
Like, is it like because it doesn't meet the description? I'm all right. I gotta have to listen to Sean's video.
What?
Okay, Ian. What do you
All
have
right,
going?
no worries. Listen, just getting into the thermonuclear lawsuit. I know you guys talked about it earlier, and sorry I missed that discussion. But I'm making my content right now about, unfortunately, why Elon is going to lose that lawsuit. So I'll let you look at that. But go to my social media accounts at iancorzine.com, whether it be YouTube or whether it be TikTok or whether it be Instagram, and find out the answer to that question.
Okay, well, one question about that. If you feel he's going to lose, which is very possible,
Yep.
Are you familiar with the Scientology versus Time Magazine lawsuit?
No, what is that?
Okay, Scientology went after Time Magazine, I believe defamation, whatever, and ultimately Time prevailed, but it was almost completely bankrupted by the legal proceedings. Scientology dragged them so hard that it was the worst thing that ever happened to Time in history, even though they prevailed. Could this be a similar scenario that, yeah, Elon may ultimately lose, but Media Matters is going to suffer greatly through the process?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like malicious prosecution to me. That could happen. I don't know. You got to understand that behind Media Matters and a number of different organizations are very big billionaires who have an agenda. So, to be honest, Media Matters is merely just a talking head, a made up, an kind of entity. So it's really less about that. It's more about whether or not, it's more of a battle between, these titans and who's going to win. And unfortunately, if you look at the lawsuit, you look at the allegations, I'm thinking that Elon has not carefully thought about what he's actually alleging they did wrong. Because if there was an issue of hacking, misuse of the platform, that might be something to consider. But from what I've read the lawsuit multiple times, and there isn't that. Basically, Media Matters has used the platform as it could be used and is repeatable. And Elon saying that is the wrong that caused all the mass exodus of advertisers. So we could talk about it more in detail some time. I think it's more of a publicity move on Elon's behalf. Certainly, he had his recent interview, which I guess was on Wednesday, talking about this. I think it's a whole push. But I think that there's a real larger danger with this. And that is that if we continue to do these lawsuits, that even if they, prove bankrupting of the defendants, it could be that we see more and more lawsuits against social media platforms trying to destroy them, which really could, in my thoughts, end social media as we know it. So that's
I don't know if that's
interested to know.
Is that a bad thing or a good thing? And it does lead into, like, his friend Peter Thiel backed the Hulk Hogan lawsuit, which eliminated Gawker, who, by the way, owned Deadspin before. So you know what kind of company Deadspin is from.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There is interesting questions. Well, you're right, Ian, about it being a danger, but in a way, maybe that's a good thing, because I'm tired of all these companies bullying other people. And if they know their consequences, then maybe we can get a truce. Maybe we can get an impasse and just say, okay, knock this crap off before, mutually assured destruction, if you will.
Well, I also think there's a couple of ramifications, and a lot of it has to do with more community-based social media. It's been predicted for a long time that we're moving close. We're not the product. We pay for the service, and we interact how we want to interact. There's not as big a concern about advertising at that part, because the bottom line is advertisers that want to be there can be there. And if they don't want to be there, they don't have to be there. And frankly, the subscriptions will sustain the business model as it is. So that could be the ramification. I think Elon certainly drops hints all day long about the fact that he wants it to be subscription based. And by him saying F you advertisers, I think what he's communicating to the public is, I'm going to have to raise rates because of this problem. I'm creating this bad man, this boogeyman, so that it's going to justify us paying more money to be able to be part of it. And he's really set it up real well right now, where if you pay, you get boosted. I don't exactly know how that works, and I don't see it all the time. I also see that Premium Plus, you still see ads, so I don't quite get it. But I do think that there's a lot of ramifications from this lawsuit that the public needs to be aware of.
Well, he's also trying to create WeChat, so there's another level to the whole thing where he has stated even before he bought Twitter, before any of that if he did, he wanted to make WeChat over and over and over. So
absolutely,
I never know which way it's going to shake down. And you mentioned about people paying. Do you pay? I do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I want to be part of the platform. I actually support it. I'd like to have freer discussions. I don't know exactly what is in Elon's mind about freedom of speech. He certainly regurgitates all the talking points. We hear it all day long, but we also see some censorship. We also see advertising. We see lots of inconsistencies. But ultimately, it is right now, at least for America, the place where we come together and we can actually have more advanced dialogue. If you go to the other social media platforms, with the exception of YouTube, Spotify, some of those, you're not seeing advanced dialogue. You're seeing actually kind of just very dumbed down, kind of first level awareness type dialogue. So I support that. And for the $11 or whatever it is per month, it works for me. But I also want to point out that we're going to a different era right now. It's an era I think is going to be more community based. We're going to have less and less of these discussions about public square, because we're going to be in this group and it's going to be us versus them. And so I'm actually kind of excited for it, kind of like what you alluded to, Eric.
All right. Now, Dave, what do you have going on?
Yeah, so I'm working on my headphones or my microphone, but I have Jodi Arias trial, been streaming trials. If you don't know me, Making Law Simple. But every Saturday and Tuesday at noon, we're rewatching the Jodi Arias trial, so that'll be tomorrow. And then I've started a new weekly stream Wednesdays at 7 p.m., a legal sort of review of the trials and things like that have been going on, sort of an update for people who can't watch the trials altogether. It's kind of slow for trials right now, but then in January, we got the Crumbly case that'll be starting, and I will have my cameras in the courtroom. That's the county that I reside in, and I'll be streaming that entire trial. So check it out. Oh, we also have Legos coming up on December. Thank you for reminding me. We do a Lego stream with myself and Valhalla Waits, where we bring in people and a guest from another LawTuber or YouTuber and interview them while we build Legos. So it's kind of a fun little thing that we do once a month, and that is on the 16th.
Awesome. Steve, you've been talking this whole time. I guess we gotta let you just give your piece. No, go ahead.
Well, I'll keep it short then. So we'll get in our hypothetical private jet and make a circuit around the country and check on the updates in courthouses of America for the major crime cases that are going on. Like David said, there's been a pause in some of those, but there's still some things to look at. Ruby Frankie's husband getting a divorce. What does that mean for her husband testifying against him? I've heard the wrong law on that on several channels so far. So let's look at what the actual rules are. Tim Ferritter, Alex Murdaugh, all your favorites will be there. Sleaze Bags and the wrongly accused. You decide that. We'll talk about it tomorrow at 5.
Could you imagine being in her husband's position? But then it makes me wonder, how could he have not noticed the kids looking malnourished or having problems? Because the impression I got, it was a pretty gross situation with like ligature marks and things like that on the kids.
Well, I'm wondering if he's not setting himself up strategically with this divorce filing. I mean, I know he probably wants to be divorced from her, but the way he's handling it, I think it's very much strategic. And I think Southern law just froze.
Yeah, we all went into a spin there, at least on my channel. Maybe it's just me. I think it's just mine, huh?
Oh.
Okay, cool.
Just what
No.
Oh, okay. I guess there's tech. Well, okay. Well, we're wrapping up as the signal is fading. So everybody, hey, if you like this kind of show, and I forgot to ask earlier, but maybe we can get to 25,000 here on YouTube. There's 1,129 people watching. I think I need like 50. Maybe 50 of you.
Just do it.
Consider subscribing.
Do it.
Really good content. We do it every week with some really stellar people. And I will see you next Friday.